Hello everyone and welcome to this webinar on the IIM Purpose, Benefits and Future Goals. My name is Tony Evans and as co-chair of the IIM, I have the pleasure of hosting today's event. I'm very pleased to introduce today's presenters, Janet Morris, a highly experienced interim executive who you may have seen on her IIM YouTube introduction video, and my fellow board member, Bruce Rayner, digital marketeer and international CEO extraordinaire. Today's webinar team is completed with fellow board member Simon Jones in the back office, making sure we stay on track with delivery. The format, as ever, is a Zoom webinar where we will be happy to receive questions via the Q&A button from you during the presentation. I'll keep them to the end unless I see something that is important to raise as we go. We should have time for a pretty solid Q&A session, I think, to cover questions being asked. The plan is for the three of us to speak for about 10 minutes each, and then there should be plenty of time for covering questions being asked. We're recording the webinar, and this will be made available on our YouTube channel to all who registered for the event. So really, without further ado, I'll ask Simon to show the first slide in the deck to start us off. Sorry, I'm just, there we go. No, not there. Right, sorry. The agenda. So, I'll spend about 10 minutes talking about the IIM and its purpose and its history and a bit of background. Then I'm going to hand over, sorry, Simon, can you pop back, please? Thank you. The second item will be what it's like being an interim and why I joined the Institute, which Janet will cover. And then the third element will be how the IIM is supporting the interim executive now and looking into the future. And so Bruce will take us on a journey that way. So Simon, if you'd change slide now, please. So this one really sums up what we're about. We are the only dedicated body in the UK, and we started our process on the 2nd of April 2001, and it was after a lot of work at that time set up by some founding members, which included a number of members of the IMA, the Interim Management Association, which is the provider body, which is a subset of the Recruitment and Employment Confederation. The original activity was established and set up using the good offices of the Institute of Management, which later became the Chartered Management Institute. So initially the IIM was in fact a special interest group of that body. Simon, if you'd be kind enough to put me through to the next slide, I'd be grateful, please. Thank you. Okay, so there are 4 elements that the Institute focuses on behalf of its membership. The first one I want to talk about is accreditation. Everybody who looks to be a member of the Institute applies to the membership. Can you pop back one, please? Sorry, thank you. So that all our members, at whatever level they come in, be it associate or full member, will have gone through a similar process. That is that their bona fides will have been read, confirmed and checked and referenced to make sure that we maintain an adequate quality and conformance to the requirements of the Institute. And that process has been a constant since the Institute was formed in 2001. It's also a model that's been used by other interim institutes or associations in Europe. There are a number now, and that's been picked up and been seen as the way of doing things. As well as the basic accreditation process, we also operate a code of conduct. And so on accepting the invitation to join the Institute when you've applied for membership and gone successfully through that accreditation, accepting membership means that you agree to comply with our code of conduct, which I'm sure everybody will have read and inwardly digested. So it's really about quality conformance. That's anybody who demonstrates that they are a member of the Institute, they fly the logo, that it represents that kite mark of quality within the profession. The other thing on this slide I want to talk a little bit about is lobbying. Pretty much since the start of the Institute, there have been various forms of regulation, both in the UK and indeed being generated by the European Union, which can impact upon the way that interims need to work. In the early days of the Institute, there was not a great deal, in fact, at that stage, of freelancer activity. It's something which has grown very rapidly as we've gone through the 2000s. And things like IR35, for example, which initially were aimed at quite specifically IT contractors, and there was visible difference between the way they operated and the way that senior interims operated. That's blurred over the years, and it's made life more complicated, and particularly as a greater range of freelancer activity has occurred and concerns have been raised by government and others regarding the safety and well-being of people. Regulation on a broader front, not just IR35, was being introduced in order to give protection to these more vulnerable groups of people. The problem has been, from the interim's perspective, that it's quite difficult to discern legally between an interim operating and somebody who might be a cockle picker on Morecambe Beach in a gang with gang masters and so forth. So the activity that we undertake in lobbying is something which is very important, so that the membership and indeed the profession doesn't get damaged by unintended consequences of legislation which is well meant to protect others who are more vulnerable. That activity has gone on now and continues to go on, and I suspect IR35 won't be mentioned for the last time just by me talking about it, but other things like money laundering regulations, temporary workers directive, agency workers directive and so forth are all versions of regulation which can potentially impact on what we do. And more recently, of course, the Taylor report has represented a whole set of new potential issues as protection for employment protection rights across everywhere in the UK becomes much more relevant. Could you move on to the next slide, please, Simon? Thank you. The two other areas that we focus on as an institute are here represented by our education and our showcasing. The education piece is relevant in two directions, really. We do things to help educate the professional interim. That's one of the key reasons for being present as an institute, as a professional institute. But we also look to educate the marketplace in general. So we work on our own or with providers, for example, to try and help educate potential end clients to demonstrate the benefits of using an interim executive as a management tool to achieve an aim in your organisation. That education to some extent has also extended into the development of the art in the public sector, going back at least 10 years now, where we had relationships with the Home Office, for example, in putting together frames and terms of reference for interims working within central government. Education for the individual interim. We've also done over the years a number of activities, events, which always have some educational aspect to them. And we've also worked hand in hand with different educational establishments, focusing on particular elements that are relevant to the interim executive. We've worked with Cranfield on occasions in the past, and also Cass Business School, where we run day events. And that has overlapped to some extent with the second piece on this slide, which is the showcasing. So one of the things that the Institute aims to do is to be able to promote its members and the work that they do. So with the Cass Business School, which was a day event, I'm just using this as an example, each member attending had the opportunity to be able to promote and demonstrate their particular form of interim management to all the delegates present. It wasn't just there for interims, it was there for providers and for end clients, academics and so on. So there's plenty of that, and I suspect that Bruce might touch a little later on what we're doing for showcasing now and looking forward for the membership, to give a better platform on which people can talk to a much wider audience through electronic media and so on. I think that's probably about all I want to say in terms of background, history and so forth. The Institute's been around for 19 years now and has managed to grow and develop some aspect of its activity in every single year that it has operated. And I think Bruce a little later will tell us a bit more about that for now and the immediate future. But before we get to that, I'd like to hand over now to Janet, who's going to talk to us a little bit more about the things that she sees as important for an interim, and the benefits that she can feel that she sees from the Institute as well. So Janet, it's all yours now.
Thank you, Tony. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very aware on the webinar today there's people who are thinking about doing interim as well as wanting to know about interim the Institute. So I'm going to talk about two perspectives really. But first of all, just to introduce myself. I've been an interim manager or executive for more than 15 years. I've worked on more than 20 assignments, from sales and marketing director of a chain of children's nurseries to interim chief executive of OCR, the exam board. Thank God I wasn't there this year. Sales and marketing director of a global international education organisation. And I'm about to take on an interim chief commercial officer for a very small startup, but they're growing at 600% month on month at the moment. So very exciting. So Simon, next slide, please. So I thought I'd just start off with why companies use interim managers. They're looking for people who've got experience, people who've got a track record of having been there and done that, and really coming in to lead change in their organisation. So it's a real benefit to have people with maturity and experience to go in and help an organisation through a particularly tricky time. Secondly, somebody who can go in and hit the ground running, provide immediate leadership and just get on with the job and really help the organisation move forward. Within interim management, it's often what you can do in the first 100 hours as opposed to the first 100 days. So it's going in, moving quickly, delivering results and really helping the company to turn that corner, whatever needs to be done. Interim managers go in and they advise, they implement and they execute. So often interim managers work hand in hand with consultants who go and provide the direction of travel or the advice. And often the interim managers go in to fine tune that advice and do the implementation. So interim managers can do both. They can provide the advice and they can implement. One of the benefits of using interim to a company is that they're able to transfer knowledge. Because there's so much experience with interim executives, they can over time pass that skill and understanding and knowledge to the employees of the company. And one of the key things is to be available immediately. If you get a phone call about an assignment, the interim executive needs to be available somehow. I often start doing 1 or 2 days a week and then increase my capacity as another assignment drops down. But it's about being flexible and being available immediately for the company. And go on to the next slide, please, Simon. So really why I became an interim executive is the variety. As I mentioned earlier, I've worked in a whole breadth of organisation, about 20 different sectors, from public sector, private sector, startup, currently going for private equity in one of my clients. So you just get so much variety, but also the roles that you take on, from a sales role to a marketing role, whatever it may be, but you always get that variety. And often you don't really know why you're there until your first week, when you discover that someone's been sacked, or the company's making a loss, or there's something going on. So that's one of the challenges, is actually trying to decipher why you're there. One thing I always do in my first week is make sure I've got really clear objectives and deliverables. This helps you get your priorities and really helps you focus on why you're there. And also enables you to say, no, I'm not here to do that. I'm here to do this. If you want me to do that, it means that something else will have to be deprioritized. So it really helps you, but of course it helps the client get what they want. You're independent from politics. You're aware of what's going on, but you don't need to get involved. You can observe from the sidelines and just carry on with delivering your objectives. And because interims work in such a variety of sectors and in a variety of roles, you're always learning. But also that learning can go on to your next client. So it's actually moving something you've learned in the past and tweaking it, but taking that forward with you. So I believe that interim executives have a toolkit of things that they can use from the past, adapt and use in the future. A real benefit of interim management: you're free, you're flexible. You haven't got to have an annual leave sheet signed to go on holiday next week. You just say, I'm not in next week, I'm on leave. Clearly you plan it in advance and you're open and communicate it, but you just work within reason when you want to work. Ideally, I think lots of interims hope to do 6 months off and 6 months on. It doesn't work like that. Just some contracts are 9 months and some contracts are 3 months. But it is possible to have those gaps, and if it's what you want. But of course, we're always looking for that next assignment. And one of the other benefits of interim is the network, building your network of contacts. I, over the years, have built a massive network of contacts. And if I don't know somebody who can do something, I know somebody who knows somebody who can do something. So moving on to really why I joined the Institute of Interim Management is because of that network. We have a WhatsApp group, for example, where we can share thoughts and ideas. It's new, but it's actually very active. Through the board, who I'm working with, doing some support at the moment, I'm getting some ideas and thoughts from them, but also it's just an opportunity to meet other people. The other benefits, there's resources on the website where you can find out about interim management, about how to write your CV, about sectors you're working in, so real benefits there. And as Tony mentioned, there's events and training. The last few weeks there's been some excellent seminars by the interim service providers, the interim recruitment companies, talking about interim management and what they look for an interim manager. But there is a whole plethora of training and events that people can join. Just moved online, but previously they were face-to-face. There's also introductions to third parties. As an interim, we need to have a limited company, insurance, our contracts need checking, and there's a whole network of people or organisations we can go to get that advice. But as I mentioned, for me, the benefit really is the network of people and you can talk to and take advice from. I'm now going to hand over to Bruce, that's going to talk more about the Institute and where it's going. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Simon, there's a slide that we can pull up, and just while we're doing that, a little bit about my background. I became independent in 1992, which I think for those of you that are counting is about 28 years ago. I was unfeasibly young when I did that, and it was at a time when I didn't even know that interim management was a thing, and I thought I was probably the only person doing it. And so I guess stumbled upon the IIM when I was doing some prospecting and looking for people who could potentially help me find work. And of course, there were these things called the interim service providers, and the IIM, as Tony says, about 19, 20 years ago, started to do a survey, and the details of these interim service providers were published. And so I became aware of the work of the Institute. And over the last couple of years, I thought that I wanted to give something back to the profession. So I got involved in helping the board look at how we potentially become or keep ourselves relevant and become a 21st century professional digital first institute. And so looking at what's coming and what we've been doing, I suppose the background to this, as you see on the left-hand box, is that there is this continuing need to educate the market about executive interim, the market being both the client community and really oftentimes some of the interim service providers about what we do as individuals, what our own individual skill set is, because interim executives are not a homogeneous commodity. Everyone is different, the skill sets are different, but as Janet says, there are some commonalities in terms of, you know, being at the top of our game and being able to go into an organization and quickly make an impact. Although, as Janet rightly points out, sometimes we don't know why we're here. And that's really been a perennial question for me, probably throughout my whole life, is trying to answer, why am I here? But anyway, that was, I did chuckle at that remark. So educating clients as to what the role of interim is it gap filling, is it management, is it change, what is it, and why should clients use that? And that's an ongoing mission. Now, we also think that there are about 3,000 career executive interims, and as Tony says, there are many more contractors, independent execs, NEDs, and others, and each service provider would probably claim to have a database numbering into tens of thousands, and they'll talk to clients and they'll say, you know, whatever you need, we can find it. We've got a massive database. But what we've seen over, certainly in recent times, and through various, the couples of recessions, I mean, I saw this in about 1992, I saw it again in 2008 with the banking collapse, and we're seeing it again now with the COVID pandemic, is that there's a bit of a shakeout in terms of who are providing real leadership and executive transformation and helping companies with those kind of things, and people who are also providing the much needed kind of gap filling when either a company has fired its CEO, or someone's gone on maternity leave, or has some sort of unexpected event, and we're parachuted in very quickly to try and either hold the fort or make a difference. And the other thing that's been happening, of course, is that the background of this and the pandemic has led to an ever-changing and a quickening of client needs. So, you know, there's no such thing as business as usual in the interim exec world. It's business is as unusual. And those client needs within sectors, within individual clients, and within economies are forever changing. And what we've seen in this that's been prompted by the pandemic is really that I suppose 3 years worth of technological advance has been condensed into 3 months. And we've seen the whole rise of working from home, working remotely, using video conferencing like this as being the kind of norm, the new normal, if you like. I mean, from my own point of view, I'm CEO of a company which is based in Finland, and I'm running that from West Sussex because I wasn't able to travel from March onwards. So the pandemic has brought its own challenges, and as we come out of the pandemic and we find that new normal, clearly there are going to be challenges and opportunities. And as Tony mentioned, the background of IR35 has caused us to really do some soul searching in terms of what is the profession, how do we work, and what should the response be. So within this kind of remit to be the voice of the profession, the 21st century professional body for the executive interim, this is what the mission is. So getting out there, lobbying, doing that kind of work, as Tony says, but also supporting interims with continuous professional development at various career stages. So whether you're thinking of joining the profession, or whether you're having a mid-career crisis, you know, you've done some assignments and suddenly the work seems to have dried up, or you have to reinvent yourself because your last assignment was something different, and how do you update that in your CV and keep the body of work fresh? You know, who am I? What do I do? I'm sure we've all had those moments where we're writing our CV and we're thinking, I could do with some help on this, or how does this come over? Or whether you're a bit like me, you're a seasoned interim and you're thinking, you know, how do you keep fresh? What do you do? What are the new tips and tricks? How do you keep up to date with the market to either find work or deliver work or keep up to date with technology? One of the things that we're trying to do as an institute is to support the interims at each of those stages. And the other thing that I think is important and we've been working on is the fact that, as I say, when I started this, I thought I was the only one. But as we've gone through this, we've seen that, you know, collaboration, reaching out to other interims, sharing experiences, you know, we are stronger together than any one of us is individually, both sometimes when we're delivering work, but also as a profession when it comes to things like lobbying or education or just knowledge sharing about, you know, what state of the art is and how we keep ourselves sharp and on the front foot, and being that kind of the go-to person when a client either thinks they have an opportunity, a problem, or an opportunity, or indeed there's a conversation where an opportunity can be identified. So the outreach, the collaboration, developing those resources, and I'd just like to run through 5 or 6 of these. First is the annual survey, which I'm assuming a number of you would have participated in, and you've probably heard some of the follow-up webinars that we ran on what did the annual survey mean, what did the providers, you know, what are they seeing in the market themselves. So again, bringing together this wisdom of the crowd, if you like, to try and make sense of this ever-changing world that we're living in. A library of resource. Now, at the moment, if you go onto the IIM website, you'll find stuff there, but there's work to pull together the resources in a library form. And one of the things that we'll be doing this year is to scope and launch a new website, which really moves away from being, you know, a website, but a digital platform where interims, clients, it becomes the hub for everything that's relevant about the interim exec profession. As Janet mentioned, we've launched a WhatsApp group. I think something like 30% of the membership have already subscribed, but I would urge you, if you're in the 70% who hasn't subscribed, to jump onto the WhatsApp group. There's some lively discussion, some good content there, and who knows, in time you'll probably see some job opportunities emerging on there through networking with your fellow interims. We have a LinkedIn page. Webinars like this, there was 7 in the series. We're talking about upcoming webinars, and we'd be very interested to find out from you guys the topics that you'd like to see webinars being run on. And finally, working alongside the interim service providers. You know, one of the things we've seen as we've run these webinars was how enthusiastic they were to come and talk to us and to participate in this. And so with those people and also other expert resources, Tony mentioned Cass Business School, but people like London Business School, other thought leaders who are researching into management and leadership, who can bring really sharp perceptions and insights on what's happening in the market. So that's what we're doing this year, and there's a rolling agenda going forward. As I say, trying to keep the thing fresh, on the front foot, but really it's only as good as the input that we get from the membership. So the watchword really is collaboration. I would urge people to get involved. It's your institute. It's not a bunch of people that are sitting there in ivory towers handing stuff down. It's people like you and me that are keeping the thing fresh with new ideas, and hopefully long may that continue. So I'm going to hand back to Tony now, and I think we're ready for some Q&A.
Thanks very much indeed for that, Bruce. We've got a few questions on the Q&A. I'm going to start with one from Mark, where he was talking about the webinar format being an excellent format and very flexible like interims. So it seems to be suggesting that it was a tool absolutely made for us. Would you concur with that, Bruce?
Sorry, I was just answering another question on the on the thing. You caught me out. You caught me out, Tony. So repeat the question, please.
Sorry, it's a comment really from Mark. He's saying that he thinks the webinar format is excellent. It's very flexible, and it's just like how the interims need to be. So the suggestion is it was designed with us in mind, really. And I just wondered what your thoughts on that were. Well,
I mean, it's really interesting, this, because I mean, for a large part of what I've done, and I'm sure you guys are similar, I've worked from home. I mean, I've clearly traveled to client offices, but a lot of the work has been done, you know, sitting here, either thinking or talking on the phone or writing stuff or researching. And of course, when the pandemic came along and we were all forced to work from home, everybody was thinking, well, how is that going to work? And one of the things that I've found running a business that's been based in Finland and Sweden is that just how easy it is to do the work in the webinar or in the video, in the world of video conferencing. And I mean, I know that there's been a lot of different views on this. You know, some people in sales are keen to get back to face-to-face contact, but for me, I think it's kind of sharpened things up. Meetings are shorter. We're more on point. We're getting stuff done quicker. Of course, we can't be in the office to see what people are doing. But again, the world of work is not about getting people there so as you can oversee them or sit on their shoulder. It should be about allowing talent to kind of thrive and develop and participate. And for me, I think absolutely the webinar format is kind of made for us for all sorts of reasons, whether it's in prospecting, talking to clients, or actually delivering work. So it's something I certainly welcome. I mean, as
Okay.
someone who's been self-isolating for the last 15 years, it certainly has worked for me. It certainly has worked for me.
I've got one here from Nigel. I'll perhaps put this to you, Janet. The question is, if the new IIM website platform for the future is the one-stop shop for interims, how might we expect the ISPs to react or respond to that new channel to market, which arguably bypasses them?
Yeah. I would say that a lot of people, interims, get their assignments without the ISPs anyway, without the interim providers. So it's just making it more direct, I guess. But I think there's a role for both. There's a role for companies to employ direct, and there's a definite role for the interim providers, because they're out there doing the work for the interims. They're doing the networking and marketing for the interims. So I think, yes, the website may enable clients to come direct, but I believe there's still room for both. The market, normal world, is big, and there's lots of opportunities, relatively. So I still think there's room for both.
Right, okay. Thank you for that. I have a question from William for you specifically, Bruce, and that he's saying he might have missed this, but on your slide, you've used the term C3K, and
Yep.
you would like to know what that stands for, please?
I've just responded to him via text. So we think there are, and again, I don't know where we got this from, Tony. Maybe you can expand on this, but we think there are about 3,000. So it's circa 3,000 executive interims working in the board capacity in C-suite roles. Either actively on assignment or trying to find work, and that number seems to have been pretty constant over the years. But again, that's just anecdotal and probably driven out of what we see in the survey, Tony. But that was where I got that from.
Right, okay, thanks for that, Bruce. I think it's really difficult to be able to define, because we don't have a national or internationally accepted definition of the term interim executive. So very hard to be able to get to anything remotely like a hard and fast number, isn't it?
For sure.
Yeah. I've been asked a question actually by I've lost it now. Where is it? Ah, yes, Tony Barker. He's asking about European equivalents of the IIM and how does he find out more. If you search in some of the larger countries, you will find that. You may also find that there are links on the Institute website to a number of country associations. So if you're interested in Germany, for example, the DDIM is the equivalent of the IIM there. The AIME is the equivalent in Spain. I think I'm right in saying the AECMT, I think it is the French version. There's an Italian version as well. So, and there are a number of others. There's a version in Austria. There's even one in Liechtenstein. What you won't know, but I will mention, is that there is currently some work being undertaken, and it's in its early stages, to try and form a European-wide interim management association, which is an association of associations. And the IIM is working currently with some of the larger associations in different European countries to see if that can be sensibly established. But that's a sort of watch this space thing.
Tony, did you see the question from Mark Goblot?
I've got one more question on here at the moment, which is open, which was to do about face-to-face training. Have you got a different one, Bruce?
Well, let me just read what Mark has asked, because I think it's such a great question. He's asking, will the words interim management continue to be representative of the expanding range of roles in the field, and how they may be moving towards change management than filling traditional management gaps as interims? And I've asked Mark what his own view on that is. And I suppose, you know, that's a conversation that we've all had, where transformation is the kind of much maligned term. You know, everybody is transforming something, but what does it really mean? And whether interim management, because again, you know, management is about, well, historically the definition of management was about creating order, and leadership was about creating movement. So when you talk about interim management as a definition, there is some difficulty about what that actually means as a term, but for want of a better one, that's the one we've got.
And I think that's a fair summation actually at the end there, Bruce. It's very difficult. I would point to the survey, which I think I'm right in remembering that in the 220 survey, over 90% of all assignments being reported in the survey were involving some form of significant change by the interim.
Absolutely.
And one of the things people may have noticed is that when I put the first, Simon was kind enough to put the first slide up once we got beyond the agenda, I talked about interim practitioners.
Yeah.
And for me, my sense is that what we're seeing is a group of people who are highly expert at what they do. And they've got to be able to do what they do in a whole range of different circumstances. So you have to be expert, not just being flexible and adaptable, but you need to be good at beginnings, middles and ends, because that's what interims do. Every assignment is a beginning, a middle and an end. And I think having that expertise, the term practitioner to me is also right, because we're all about activity, action, getting things done. It's not sit back and twiddle your thumbs and think of the next creative idea. You may well be very creative and do a lot of innovative work, but it's about getting it done. And Janet made the point earlier, which I think is absolutely spot on. That is, you don't get 100 days to sit back and look around and think what life's about. The whole assignment could be finished in 100 days. It's 100 hours, if you're lucky, to be able to assess the whole situation and really understand what you need to be doing. And again, speaking personally, I've been in the game, as it were, now for, well, since 1994. So I'm a newcomer compared to you, Bruce. It's just sort of incredible how important it is that you don't take anybody's word for it when you're going in. You have to check every assumption, and in every assignment where I've run into an issue, it's because I have made an assumption. And I've just found myself having to go back and redo something or change something because I've made an assumption, because in the previous so many assignments it's always happened that way, and this time of course it hasn't. Okay, so going back to questions, I've got one here from Mark. No, that's the one we just talked through, sorry.
Well, he's got a supplementary point, which I think you've tackled there. He's saying it is simply a perception I noted, but this image may prevent more entrants who would otherwise prefer to be agents of change, possibly. I mean, I think the if I could just answer that quickly. I mean, when I did the assignment before last, it was a private equity-backed business who had it really hit a bump in the road, and I was parachuted in at very short notice. There was a bit of gap filling involved because the co-CEOs were no longer there. But I was joined by an HRD, and the HRD came in to do the human resources job. She definitely had the interim mindset, but was also, because of her own personal circumstances, would have been open to taking a permanent job with the business, or looking at going perm with another employer. Now, I mean, never say never, but as a career interim, I've ended up as a career interim, not because it was a choice going forward. When I started, I was open to anything, but actually looking back, I probably would have never wanted a permanent job, and that's why I never really took one. But of course, everybody's personal circumstances are different. So you do get people coming in and out of the profession between permanent and interim exec. And so the profession, to that extent, does allow for fluidity. I don't think there's any snobbishness on my part that just says because I've never had a permanent job, that makes me special. Maybe in the eyes of the client, I'm doing a different thing, and therefore, we don't want the permanent job. So as Janet says, we're not involved in the politics of this. So it's an interesting and complex thing, which I think, to Mark's point, you just can't. There's not a catch-all that says we're all the same.
Yeah. Janet, there's a comment here from Mark. Forgive me if I get your surname wrong, Mark. Mark Gobler or Goblot. When he mentions interim management to people that he knows, their perception is the traditional one of filling exec gaps temporarily to steady the ship. Would you like to proffer a view on how people you talk to perceive the IM role these days?
Yeah, I think sometimes that is the IM role. I don't see it as maternity cover as such, but I think it's going in when there's a specific need and something where they want more expertise. But sometimes it is filling an executive gap because someone's been sacked suddenly, or there's a specific project that needs some real leadership. But I don't think, but what I'm finding frustrating at the moment, I've actually done what Bruce said. I was interim for 10 years and I took a permanent job for 10 years, which was never my plan. It's just the way it worked out. And about a year ago, I've decided to go back to interim because that's what I love. And I'm frustrated by all the, you sign up for these newsletters and lots of them says interim and you get temp jobs, which are not interim. And I think that's the challenge I'm finding. So I think it can include senior executive posts, and that's where I think the interim manager post should be. It's when it's the more junior posts that I find it doesn't feel right to me, but obviously I welcome other people's views. And Mark, I hope that answers your question.
Right, thanks for that, Janet. There's a comment here from Mark Walsh where he's saying he does think we need some face-to-face training, but the webinar format is invaluable. And I think I can empathise with that as a point of view. Speaking personally, I'd much rather have something where we're in the same room and face-to-face. But the current circumstances have been proving quite difficult for that to occur. It gives me the opportunity also to point people, I think, to the recent seminar series that we've established with Morphosis Partners, where we've got a group of 3 seminars in 3 different layers. One for people who are looking to come into the profession. So they're getting into the starting blocks, as it were. One where it's for people who are well into being an interim, and the third one where we've got people like perhaps Bruce and I, who are well through things and maybe even thinking about what might we do next. Each of these seminars, the content is being driven to help support each individual attending the seminar to improve their personal commercial strategy and the implementation of that to secure more or different work. And that's the whole purpose. It's been in the making with the Institute and Morphosis for the best part of a year in order to try and get a curriculum, if you like, and some tools that will come out of it that we're going to specifically help each individual. So the seminars are small in number of people attending, even their webinar format currently because of the lockdown and so on. But they're really worthwhile looking at. And I would say, you know, the idea of slicing the experience as an interim into those 3 layers is very helpful, because you're going to be working with people who are in a similar place from a professional development point of view as yourself, and not too many people gives you plenty of airtime with the people running the course who are the experts in that field. So that's really just to sort of build on what Mark was saying. And there's this might be the last question we have the opportunity for, but let's see how we go. So a question from Bob Holly. Does the IIM have we ever thought about talking to the top 20 accountancy firms as a way of building an entry point into the market? So I think there's an interesting thought in that, and Bob goes on to say that a substantial number of his own assignments have come from partners in 1 or 2 professional firms out of that top 20. And the clients of those firms greatly appreciate the skills introduced by those accountancy firms because they can't provide them directly. So I'd be interested perhaps in a brief sort of comment or feedback, Janet, from yourself, and then maybe from you, Bruce.
Yeah, I've actually tried to engage with the top 4 accountancy firms and not had much luck with getting a reply, in fact. But I believe, and it actually picks up, sorry, Simon, your question as well. I think it's really important that you're clear what you are, what is it that you do, so that when you're in touch with the professional firms, they really understand what it is about you as the person can go in and implement. And likewise, working with the interim agencies, recruitment agencies as well. So I think, yes, there's an opportunity either privately to work with the law for professional firms, accountancy firms, but it's being really clear what it is, what's your proposition, because otherwise if it's not clear to them, you're not going to get any work.
Well, it's interesting because I think back in the day, PwC used to have their own interim arm. And I think a number of the other management consultancy firms, not necessarily accountancy firms, also had interim arms to either supplement their bench with just horsepower or bring in different skills when their client needed those skills. Now, I'm not necessarily in touch with what each of these companies are doing now, but I do know that there are specialist interim service providers who do themselves source work from a number of those professional firms. And the other one, of course, Bob, is private equity, where private equity businesses, funds, have got particular challenges or opportunities, either because they're just about to do a transaction or one of their portfolio companies is struggling or needs an injection of something. And so a couple of my assignments have come through the private equity route. I'm not an accountant, so I wouldn't necessarily be picking up accountancy work from those people. But I think what you have to do is to look through the survey, look at the providers, see what they're specializing in, talk to the consultants, and And if that's a route to market that that they're going for, you could potentially piggyback on them. If it's a route to market that's working for you, then fantastic, and potentially something that could be shared with other interims where you do make those approaches. So I'm all in favour of that. As an institute, have we done it? Don't know, Tony, have we?
We've not talked to the specific thing that Bob talks about. It comes historically, of course, for the Institute, it's about educating the potential end client rather than going out and actively seeking assignments, which we don't do. But in this situation, I think, and Bob may correct me if I'm wrong, but when he's talking about the top 20, maybe he's not looking at, in PwC, you mentioned earlier, the big four, maybe Grant Thornton, and one or two others sat in there. Maybe we're talking about the pure accountancy firms here. And you get quite a number that are large kind of amalgamations of regional accountancy companies. So I can certainly see the merit in what he's saying. Perhaps I ought to be taking the opportunity to encourage Bob to get in touch, and maybe we can talk about that, because he might be just the person to help set that sort of communication line up. Yeah,
and I think if you're doing your advert for people getting involved in the Institute, I mean, Bob could be a likely contender.
Definitely.
Just
That'll
looking
teach him to join the webinar and ask a question, Bruce?
yeah, we love a volunteer. But Simon, I mean, I think Simon raises an interesting point as well. I don't know if you can see Simon's question about the breadth of experience that interims have. It, in itself, is the basis of confusion. Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right there, Simon. It's probably part of the role of the Institute to be educating clients as to what executive interims are capable of delivering, and through the library of case studies and outreach and that kind of thing, some of the examples that I know that I mean Janet's talking about having delivered 20 pieces of work. I'm probably similar, Tony's probably similar. Between the members in the Institute, I mean, we've probably delivered hundreds, if not thousands, of assignments, and to capture some of that case study work by way of example is probably a great way of actually helping educate clients as to what the art of the possible is.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so I'd just say thank you to Simon for the question. Actually, I think it can cause confusion. And there is a danger, I think, the way things have gone in the last few years, that the way that interims are engaged has become increasingly like a normal recruitment process, and it becomes quite dispiriting at some level that end clients just see it as another form of recruitment, when in fact it's a business-to-business transaction. And I just find it sad, because it means that we end up doing all sorts of strange things which are generally unnecessary, and it lengthens the process by which somebody needed urgently can be engaged by an organisation. One of the reasons, or one of the benefits of an interim is that they're immediately available. You can find somebody who has the expertise you need, and you engage them, and it can all be done in a matter of a few days. Anyway, Simon, thank you for the question. That's appreciated. So I think we're about through things. I've got Tom here reminding me that contact with the Big Four has been in the context of turnaround panels, so a major change clearly, and I think that's right. We've done work historically as an institute with each of the Big Four in some time or another. and often on a number of occasions. So the relationships are there at that level. I think that's probably about it in terms of questions for today. I'm conscious of time, so it probably just remains for me now to sort of finish off by asking or saying a thank you to both Janet and to Bruce for their inputs today. I hope you've all found the webinar useful, and I hope that the last slide, which Simon has been kind enough to put up, encourages people beyond Bob to actually get in touch. And just keep in mind, please, that the Institute is for the individual interim, and it's run by interims, and we do this on a pro bono time available basis. So the more people we can have involved and committed to doing a bit, the more opportunity we have to be able to do more of the things we'd really like to do to improve the ability for interims to operate in the market. Just a reminder that you'll receive an email link to the recording over the next few days, which will be put up onto the Institute's YouTube channel. And I wish you all a good rest of day, and I encourage you to keep an eye on the website for the next webinar series, which will be into the autumn and winter. So just a final plug. If you're not a member and wish to look at applying, please do so in the first instance by contacting member services at iim.org.uk. You can see on the slide. And if you're not, if you are a member and you want to be able to join in, you can do that without any problem. Thank you all very much, and hopefully see you at the next webinar.